The Incredible Hulk coaster is one of the most recognizable icons as part of the Universal Orlando Resort, opening up at Islands of Adventure back in 1999. The attraction is one of the first rides you see upon entering the park. It's located to the left of port of entry in Marvel's Superhero Island. You'll see these huge towering inversions flying over your head, shooting up over the lake. It's probably one of the most well-known roller coasters in the world at this point. I feel like everyone has seen this view. The Incredible Hulk was one of the first B&M coasters to ever open up at a Universal property alongside Dueling Dragons, which opened the same year. But now that Dueling Dragons is no more, Hulk is the only B&M coaster at the resort. It's a huge crowd pleaser. I first experienced the ride back in 2011. I actually credit this ride with being the roller coaster that got me into roller coasters, because prior to riding this, I was nervous to ride these huge towering thrill rides. And when I first saw this ride, I was like, no way, I'm not getting on it. But by the end of the day, I sucked it up, I did it, and well, after that, I never stopped wanting to ride roller coasters. So I have a lot of sentimental attachment to this ride. This is going to be my full in-depth review of the attraction. I'm going to walk you through the ride experience, tell you what it's like to experience the Hulk if you haven't already. But depending on when you rode it, your ride experience might be drastically different. You see, even though the ride opened back in 1999, for the 2016 season, it was revitalized in this huge refurbishment. All of the track was completely replaced except for the station, launch track, and brake runs, and that includes the supports too. Those were completely redone. And despite what some believe, that retracking was done specifically for Universal Orlando for the Incredible Hulk. It was not just left over from the abandoned Universal Dubai project. Because Universal Orlando is open 365 days a year with extremely long operating hours, Hulk reached its maximum life expectancy in a shorter amount of time than the average B&M coaster that operates in a park with an off-season. Think of it this way. This ride is open every day in the brutal Florida heat, typically operating with 3 trains, dispatching every 47 to 60 seconds, putting through at least 12,000 guests a day. That's a minimum of 4.38 million riders per year. This thing receives a lot of wear and tear. So that's why this refurbishment was such a big deal. It was the first B&M coaster to ever receive a full retracking, but Universal went all out with this. They also gave the attraction brand new trains complete with onboard audio. Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy composed a custom on-ride soundtrack, and it is fantastic. The audio is actually so loud that even if you aren't riding the coaster, just from standing on the pathway, you can hear the ride vehicle go around the track with the bum 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 bum. At this point, it's become iconic, and it's a bummer when you experience Hulk without the onboard audio. And it's just not the same. But it's such a sleek train design, and it really works with this new front entrance that they gave it. The original Hulk entrance was this big, tall, cartoony sign. It fit the vibe a bit more with Superhero Island, but for the refurbishment, they gave it something a little bit more dynamic. You have this huge statue of the Hulk lifting up the lead car for one of the vehicles, ripping up a huge section of track. So B&M actually designed 2 sections of track that riders would walk between, aimed to look like the exact same track that you'd see on the roller coaster. It is one of the coolest ride entrances, period. Now, let's run through some stats. Despite what it may appear, Hulk only stands 110 feet in the air. Probably my favorite fun fact I've ever heard about this ride, it is only 5 feet taller than Maverick. And think about how small that attraction looks. In comparison, this ride looks huge. It's all about placement. The lift hill for Maverick is far away from guest view. If you were standing right under it, it would look a lot bigger than it is. Hulk features a 105-foot drop, although it doesn't feel like much of a drop because that first element is this inversion directly after the launch. You don't get that stomach-dropping feeling that you get on other big roller coasters like Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket or Velocicoaster. This ride is very focused on inversions. There are 7 of them on the attraction, 3,700 feet of track. And for those keeping track, it is also one of only 6 operating B&M sit-down coasters in the world. And funny enough, one of those is a near clone of the Incredible Hulk at Universal Studios Beijing, opening up in 2021. Hulk was such a big success, they said, we want to clone that, but they made some modifications. They gave it vests, did some slight reprofiling, and gave it a Transformers theme. The ride is called Decepticoaster. I'd love to ride that one day. I imagine it would be very bizarre, as familiar we are with Hulk, to experience that same ride, but in like an alternate reality. Now, Islands of Adventure being one of the busiest theme parks in the world means you typically do have to deal with some longer lines. I would say on average, Hulk gets like a 40-minute wait, which considering the lines that Velocicoaster and Hagrid's usually get, this is actually one of the shorter wait times in the park. So as a result, it's actually one of the roller coasters that I do more often. It's less of a time commitment. And thank goodness it is, because this ride also has an incredibly strict loose article policy. You can't have anything metal in your pockets, so no phone, no car keys, but they encourage you to put everything in your pockets in a locker. The lockers are free unless you have a big backpack, you have to pay for those, but they offer these smaller lockers that you just scan your park ticket, door pops open, and then you pick up your items as you get off the ride. This is one of the original iterations of the loose article policy that Universal came up with. They have since come up with a much better one with Velocicoaster with the double-sided lockers. That means you could have items like your cell phone and keys with you for most of the line, and then you just part ways with it for like the last little section. But if Hulk is a 2-hour wait, that's 2 hours without your phone. It is definitely not an ideal situation, but that queue was not designed to hold something like double-sided lockers, so I don't think there's really anything they can do about it, and because of the ride's interaction with the pathway, it is important that there's nothing in your pockets. There are just too many people that ride this ride. You don't want anything to potentially fall in the pathways. They do have nets up in case like your sunglasses or hat falls off, but I think this is also one of those reasons why I try to only ride Hulk when it's got a shorter wait time. The queue though is pretty cool. It's set up to look like this gamma radiation lab, so you have this huge device in the center. There are lots of TVs in place talking about different test subjects. You'll see how the radiation affected them and they turned it into the Hulk. And it's a great premise for a ride. The station is also incredible looking. It's so atmospheric. All the ride operators are wearing these like gamma radiation hazmat-like suits. You'll board one of 3 trains. There are 8 cars per train, so 32 riders per vehicle. It's nice to ride a roller coaster here that has 4 cross seating. It's the only roller coaster in the park that's like that. And from the moment the gates open until you get off the ride, it's about a 3-minute experience. So that tells you even with a normal operation of 3 trains, those ride operators are always very fast. As you dispatch out of the station, you start up what appears to be at first a tire-driven lift hill. The music kicks in with a dun dun dun, getting you all hyped up. That's when you take off. You reach a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour in 2 seconds. It's a really punchy launch, especially because you're at an angle. It like pins you to the back of your seat and then you just whip through this first 0G roll. And this inversion kind of comes as a surprise because before that you're in complete darkness and then you're blasting out into the bright light. It takes you off guard. After that inversion, you're dropping down to the ground. You valley out over the water. There's this nice splashdown and then this huge cobra roll. And you take this cobra roll pretty fast. It is very whippy. I typically am grayed out at this point the entire time. I would say I usually come out of that gray out either during that vertical loop or sometimes even after that vertical loop. The beginning of this ride is very intense. You just have so much speed, and really you have the launch to thank for that. This same ride would not work with a lift hill. The train would valley at the cobra roll. You need that acceleration, and it's just such a cool way to start off this ride. The beginning of Hulk is by far the strongest section of the ride. Velocicoaster and Hagrid's might be more beloved at this point, but this is easily still the most intense roller coaster at the entire resort. In fact, I would say it's the most intense roller coaster in all of Orlando. So you have to know what you're getting yourself into when you go to ride Hulk. At the bottom of this vertical loop, there are 2 different tunnels with some mist in it. That's actually a great way to kind of cool off. You'll drop down underneath the main pathway, shoot up out the other side, and that's when you enter this helix that wraps around that launch tube. It's not too common for a helix to be partway through the ride, and in the past, I've criticized some helixes for just feeling unnecessary or like filler, but this is not one of those moments. You have so much speed here, the pacing on this attraction up until this point is really fantastic. And that's when you whip into your next inversion is a corkscrew over the main entrance. It's so iconic. And at this point, you drop down into the back half of the ride. Everything from here on out, you can't really see from the main pathway. Most of it is located behind Storm Force. You'll get thrown into a vertical loop. This one is obviously much tighter than the first one that you went through. And then you have like a half helix into your mid-course brake run. This is a moment for you to catch your breath because this ride can be a lot. I think it's actually a good thing that this ride gets a line because I can't imagine just marathoning this thing without getting out of your seat. I'd be like too dizzy. It probably also has something to do with the fact that this ride can run really, really fast. The humidity plays a huge role in that. And also how the track is greased that morning. But sometimes Hulk will be running so fast that it'll slam to a complete stop in the mid-course. Because the system will realize that, whoa, this thing is overspeeding. And what's funny is I would say that actually most times I ride Hulk, I find myself thinking, wow, it's running really, really fast. But that being said, this second half actually feels lackluster. For such an incredible ride up until this moment, after the mid-course, it's really just kind of okay. The drop off the mid-course can be kind of fun in the back. This final inversion, another corkscrew, is just nowhere near as well paced as the earlier one. And you just kind of meander through this turn and another helix, and then that's when you hit the brake run. Everything after the midcourse is really just not that memorable. Part of me almost thinks that the ride would be better if it just ended at the midcourse, although maybe then it would feel too short. But you can always tell when Hulk is running too fast because the onboard audio will be out of sync for the finale. There's a beat drop that's supposed to hit as you're dropping off the midcourse, but sometimes it'll hit when you're going through the corkscrew, and then you might hit the brake run before the music is done. Although maybe I shouldn't say done, because actually the music continues going until you come to a final stop. I actually wish it died down a little bit because it's just so loud. You can't even talk to the people sitting next to you at the end of the ride because the music is still blasting. They really should turn that down. That gives you an idea of the Incredible Hulk coaster. Here's a tip for you if you go to ride this. Keep your head forward. As amazing as some of this layout is, Hulk is not the smoothest. And I think this really goes back to what I was talking about earlier about how the park being open every single day, this ride receives a lot of wear and tear, more than the average roller coaster. I am sure that plays a part in its smoothness, but it's also possible maybe it could have something to do with the trains or the track. It's not uncommon for B&M coasters like this to feel kind of rough around the edges. It makes me curious if Decepticoaster is smoother or feels about the same, but it means that this ride is something that you really have to pace yourself with. It's entirely possible that you could come off Hulk with a headache if you aren't bracing yourself properly. So head forward is the way to go. I don't actually have a favorite seat on this ride. I love the front row, but also the back is a lot of fun. Just try and do it more than once during your visit. You'll probably notice that it'll get faster throughout the day. So let's talk final scores. For me, Hulk is an 8 out of 10. I really enjoy this ride. It's one that I want to do just about every visit to Islands of Adventure, but I also can recognize its flaws. The end of the ride is just not as good as it could be, and that roughness can negatively affect your experience, but really just about everything else is fantastic. It's a well done theme, it's got some great elements, and it's just fun to watch. I love standing there on the pathway and hearing the roar as the train shoots out of the tunnel. This ride is loud. You always know when Hulk is going, that's for sure. But let me know down in the comments below if you've experienced that incredible Hulk coaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Let me know if you agree with the points that I brought up, if you think there's anything I missed, and of course stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.